Driving again on the way back from meeting a potential customer. A little bit of a longer drive this morning, so I got some time. And so I want to tackle a concept that I talk about a lot with restaurant owners on social media, in person, whatever. And it's something that I think a lot of people that have managed restaurants before, especially owned them, do know about. But on the by and large, I have to explain this one a lot. And it is the concept of contribution margin. Now, this relates to really your entire business and how you plan on making money. An understanding of it is important to something as simple as pricing items on your menu, managing your labor costs, really anything that has to do with the business of food and managing it as a business and not just, emotionally or some other way like that. An understanding of what this concept is something you must have to build on to understand your business model as a restaurant. So let's talk about very simply what is contribution margin. The simplest definition that I can think is it is a fancy word for the portion of every dollar that you make, okay, a percentage of every dollar that you make that goes to paying any expense in your business that isn't labor or food, okay? So there's a lot of talk of, well, my food cost is this, or it's going up, right? This percentage is my cost of goods sold or my food cost. And sometimes cost of goods sold will contain even your paper products, right? I own a franchise restaurant and they give you a breakdown of every single item on that menu that right down to what paper products go into it that make that paper product. So the unit economics of the business is understood. Labor is obviously a big variable, but you should be targeting some percentage of your overall sales as what you're going to spend on labor. And labor can include management. It doesn't have to include management. I quite like excluding management from labor so that they can manage the business and those that work under the managers, and incentivizing them based off of keeping labor at a certain point, keeping cost of goods sold, etc. So the term prime cost is used to represent however much my food cost is plus however much my labor cost is. So if your food cost is 30% of the money you're taking in and your labor cost is 35% of the money you're taking in, then your prime cost is 65%. In that scenario, your contribution margin would be 35%, the opposite of whatever your prime cost is. So that means that 35% of every dollar that I make, or 35 cents, goes to paying whatever bill I must pay outside of labor and my vendors for food and beverage. So you can take that number and say, well, I'm targeting this for my prime cost. And so I know ultimately what I'm targeting is not really a prime cost, but the contribution margin, the portion of a dollar that I can use to pay for rent, to pay my salary, to pay manager's salaries, to pay utilities, things like that. And those expenses can be broken down in usually one of two ways. You have your fixed and your variable expenses, right? Your fixed expenses are things that don't change, right? Like rent. Utilities is a variable expense because it depends on how much you use it, right? So you kind of know and can predict those fixed expenses. Sometimes salaries, obviously, can be fixed expenses of the business. Loan payments can be fixed expenses of the business. Subscriptions for whatever services you use, your point of sale, whatever. Variable expenses are things like credit card processing, right? Utilities, laundry, things like that. So if you have a roundabout idea of this is about how much I do every month, and this is what I have to pay, and let's just say that number is $10,000, right? So at a contribution margin of 35 cents, you can divide 10,000 by 0.35, those 35 cents, and say that is how many dollars I must earn in a given month to pay my fixed expenses. From there, you can break that down to the days that you're open, and look at historical trends of how much I've made on those days, and you can start to set goals. So, the old adage goes, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time, right? Too many restaurant owners I know look at the score of the game when there's nothing they can do about it. By the time your profit and loss comes back from your accountant or however you get it, the game has already been played and you either won or lost. You need touch points along the way every day to say, how am I doing for my goal this month? Am I making enough to pay rent, right? Those leading indicators, if you can take them not just daily, but then hourly into your business, is quite powerful. I know when I was a server for a big chain, when I was in college, my manager would have to, scan his little card and check the point of sale every hour on the hour and check prime cost, right? Which is, of course, just the inverse of contribution margin. And if that prime cost got to a certain percentage, he would need to cut people, right? And that was just part of the training that they gave you in that corporate environment. This was a chain with 2,000 plus stores, I believe. So that level of functionality, most mom and pops, most even franchises to some degree cannot, don't have access to that data hourly, right? But you can manage it from a high level daily, and then you can manage labor hourly. And if you don't have tools to manage those things, that is a very controllable part of your business that you really should have somebody to talk to about that. So contribution margin, that's how you understand how much money should I make in a given month, in a given week, in a given day, in a given hour, on average, right? To know if my business is doing well or not.